Is there anyone further at this time for the public hearing on the zoning case? All right, seeing no further public comment, we will close the public comment portion of the zoning case.
Chairman, can I ask some questions?
Sure. Yeah, you can ask some questions. You want to do that now, or do you want to?
No, I'd actually like Katie to come back up to the podium.
Okay.
Should have been a one-topic meeting, huh?
Yeah, so you drive down here from Cleveland today for this?
I did.
Was that, what, 4 or 5 hours?
About 3:45.
Okay, that's a long haul. Hey, so I really just have a couple of questions, just specific kind of to business operations. So in addition to the medical marijuana, what other types of products are you going to be retailing? Like, you know, hats, T-shirts, bongs, rolling papers, pipes?
We don't currently, so at any of our facilities, offer T-shirts, hats, those types of things. We do have papers or cartridges, you know, the mouthpiece to go with a cartridge. But those are typically the max of our additional offerings.
So the rolling papers and the cartridges? Mm-hmm. Okay. Also, I'm curious about how you, I guess, work around financial restrictions. My understanding, you can't work with banks. Maybe I'm wrong, but I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm certainly no expert here. I've just been doing some research trying to learn. You can't take credit cards, debit cards. So are you cash only, or kind of help me understand
No,
how
so
that works?
actually, from a banking perspective, things have actually opened up pretty significantly since it became legal in Ohio. Of course, your typical larger federal banks still are a little questionable, but we typically work with local credit unions in the locations that we're in. Here in Ohio, we typically use RightPat is the bank. And as far as debit and credit, Ohio has expanded to allow debit and credit usage. So we have the functionality to do that, as well as an ATM on site for people who would prefer to use cash.
Okay, great. And last thing I thought of, and I thought of this just during, I guess, earlier testimony, I don't suppose you take medical insurance, or does medical insurance?
Not yet, unfortunately.
Okay.
Out of our control. We would love to, but.
That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kate.
Anyone else?
So for perspective and context, I started doing some research on this to look at federal law. I was more familiar with state law on the matter because I was in the General Assembly when we passed the medical marijuana bill, and then also studying through our zoning code. So I kind of got a 4-point kind of presentation, if you will, or discussion. So the first part's going to be about the federal law, second part's about Ohio law, third part's going to be about our zoning code, and the fourth part's just going to be like a 5-point bullet summary. So first off, just a definition. I got all this information from the DEA's website. Definition of marijuana. Marijuana is a mind-altering psychoactive drug produced by the cannabis plant. Pretty basic. There's a quote. The Controlled Substances Act places all substances which were in some manner regulated under existing federal law into one of 5 schedules. This placement is based upon the substance's medical use, potential for abuse, and safety or dependence liability, unquote. And I think the key word here having to do with marijuana is probably potential for abuse more than anything else. And Mr. Chairman, also, I don't typically just read from notes the way I'm doing this. I'm just, because I got a lot of material here, I just think it's going to work out better than me just trying to ad-lib it. So I want to discuss it very briefly, just give some examples of these 5 schedules that are on the DEA's website. I'm going to start with the most benign or the least concerning, which is Schedule 5. So just a couple of examples, just to put things in perspective. Anti-diarrhea medication, analgesics, cough medicine, basic stuff. So then Schedule 4 ups the ante a little bit. You got Xanax, Valium, and Ambien. And these are just samples. There's hundreds out on their website if you want to look up any particular drug. And I pulled in these samples just because some of these are household names. A Schedule 3 drug then, some examples, again, Tylenol with codeine, anabolic steroids, and testosterone. The next one is a direct quote from the DEA website. Schedule 2 drugs, substances, or chemicals are defined as drugs with a high potential for abuse with the use potentially leading to severe psychological or physical dependence. These drugs are also considered dangerous," unquote. Some examples of that. Again, this is Schedule 2. Vicodin, cocaine, methamphetamines, methadone, Demerol, Oxycontin, fentanyl, Adderall, and Ritalin. Surprised me to see Ritalin on that list. Schedule 1. Here's again, a direct quote from DEA website. Schedule 1 drugs, substances, or chemicals are defined as drugs with no currently accepted medical use and a high potential for abuse. Examples: heroin, LSD, marijuana, ecstasy, and GHB. GHB is the date rape drug. So in summary, on the federal portion of this, like heroin and LSD, marijuana is a Schedule 1 drug and is illegal for any purpose, including medical. Now for Ohio law, so a little history on this. So back in 2015, there was a failed effort put on by the pot people in Ohio to try to get recreational marijuana legalized. That failed. During the polling for all of that, medical marijuana was polling favorably with the public. So the pot people were going to go back to the ballot with their own medical marijuana language. And this, of course, the medical marijuana was a stepping stone, obviously, to go to the full recreational, like Colorado and a few other states have. So what happened was the General Assembly stepped in to work with the pot people to strike a deal and come up with legislation. So the theory is that, well, if the public is going to legalize this, let's put some controls on it and make it more the way we want it from the perspective of the General Assembly rather than the way the pot people want it from their perspective. Now, of course, they're still going to come back with full-blown recreational legalization at some point. They're going to try that again. So what I did is, so this is House Bill 523 in the 131st General Assembly. This was back in 2016. I voted no on the bill. I was part of the, I was sitting at the table having a discussion on all this. So what I did is I pulled out just, I guess about 8 or 10 bullet points on the bill, kind of what it does and doesn't do, or what it allows or disallows. And I pulled out stuff that was just kind of interesting or more really relevant to Union Township. So it permits a patient on the recommendation, and that's a key word, recommendation, as opposed to a prescription, because you cannot get a prescription for marijuana. Recommendation from a physician. Now, physician, what does that mean? You have to be an MD or a DO. Recommendation of a physician to use medical marijuana to treat a qualifying medical condition. So when we passed the bill, we listed 22 qualifying medical conditions. Since then, and left it open-ended for the pharmacy board to approve additional ones. I believe 3 more were approved since then. I'm not sure of that. So there may be like 25 conditions that are currently approved, but I'm not certain that's the case. It considers a person who has been fired for using medical marijuana to have been fired for just cause and generally ineligible for unemployment benefits. Prohibits the cultivation of medical marijuana for personal use. Prohibits the smoking of medical marijuana. However, vaping is permitted. Authorizes a municipal corporation or a township to prohibit or limit the number of retail dispensaries. Prohibits a cultivator, processor, retail dispensary, or laboratory from being located within 500 feet of a school, church, library, playground, or park. The Act permits only, the Act, that's the bill that passed, got signed into law. The Act permits only the following forms of medical marijuana to be dispensed: oils, tinctures, plant material, edibles, patches, and any other form approved by the Board of Pharmacy. It prohibits any form or method considered attractive to children. Gummy bears were mentioned tonight, which would be in that category. Plant material may not have this is a $10 word, tetrahydrocannabinol, that's THC, may not have a THC content of more than 35%, and extracts may not have THC content of more than 70%. So to put that in perspective, So I did a little research. I didn't get this from the DA's website, but I was trying to figure out, so what was the THC content, back when I was in college? And it was like 3 to 4% back then. So today's marijuana is 10 to 20 times more potent than back in the 80s. The last bullet point I got here is the possession limit is a 90-day supply is what the patients are allowed to have without running afoul of state law. So, but regardless of Ohio law, all of this is illegal under federal law. And that's the background and history, which now brings me to the specifics of our zoning resolution. So gentlemen, what I want you to consider is the Union Township zoning resolution, Article 1, Section 120. And Section 120 has 8 subsections within it, and of those 8, I want to point out 2 specifically. So Section 120 reads, "This resolution is enacted for the general purpose of promoting the public health, safety, comfort, and welfare of the residents of Union Township." So subsection 5 of Section 120 reads, "To encourage the creation of a strong sense of community identity." Subsection 6, "The creation and enhancement of a strong sense of place." Which brings me to, and this was mentioned tonight, about we had biker bars back in the 80s. We had, some of you might remember Vic's Brew and Q. There was a big shootout there, and that place eventually got shut down. Then we had the strip joints that moved in. There was rumors, deja vu. I was one of them that was personally outside picketing these places to run them out of town. Eventually, we succeeded in 2011. I don't want to see Mount Carmel or any place else in Union Township going backwards. So think of the message, additionally, gentlemen, think of the message that these places are sending to our children. Advertisements for bongs and other drug paraphernalia are already showing up in our mailboxes. We know that marijuana is a gateway drug to the more powerful and deadly addictive drugs. Also consider then Section 130, and I quote, "In their interpretation and application, the provisions of this resolution shall be held to be minimum requirements adopted for the promotion of the public health, safety, and the general welfare. Whenever the requirements of this resolution conflict with the requirements of any other lawfully adopted rules, regulations, ordinances, or resolutions, the most restrictive or that imposing the higher standards shall govern." Well, those higher standards are federal law, which states that medical marijuana is illegal. Consider Article 6, Section 614, and I'll quote, "Any use which is not specifically," the word is specifically, "any use which is not specifically permitted is prohibited," unquote. Being that medical marijuana is not a regular retail establishment, it was carved specifically into Ohio law with highly restricted and highly regulated. Cannot argue this is just any retail establishment. Also consider the Ohio Revised Code 3796.29, and again, I'm just quoting the relevant portion of this. "A board of township trustees may adopt a resolution to prohibit or limit the number of cultivators, processors, or retail dispensaries." Well, gentlemen, we've already done that. Ohio law does not require that a special resolution be passed specifically naming marijuana dispensaries in order to prohibit those businesses. Therefore, our Section 614 prevails. And again, I will quote it. "Any use which is not specifically permitted is prohibited." In my opinion, approving this zoning change would be a clear violation of our zoning code. Additionally, it would arguably make this board an accessory, if not accomplice, to a host of federal crimes. Now I'm going to sum up and conclude. I got about 5 bullet points here. Like heroin and LSD, marijuana is a Schedule I drug that is illegal under federal law for any purpose, including medical. Number 2, medical marijuana has proven to be a stepping stone to recreational marijuana. Number 3, marijuana is well known to be a gateway drug to more addictive and deadly drugs. Furthermore, the perceived societal acceptance and advertisements for drug paraphernalia sends the wrong message to our children. Number 4, Medical marijuana dispensaries are arguably in violation of multiple sections of our zoning resolution, including Article 1, Section 120. They are antithetical to the general purpose of promoting the public health, safety, comfort, and welfare of the residents of Union Township. Article 1, Section 120, Subsection 5. What medical marijuana brings to Union Township is the antithesis of a strong sense of community identity. Article 1, Section 20, Subsection 6. They are contrary to the enhancement of a strong sense of place within Union Township. Article 1, Section 130. Marijuana use, medical or otherwise, is clearly in violation of federal law and the higher standard referenced in this section. Article 6, Section 614, and I'll quote, "Any use which is not specifically permitted is prohibited." Ohio Revised Code 3796.29 does not require a special resolution specifically naming marijuana dispensaries in order to prohibit those businesses. And finally, number 5, approval of a medical marijuana dispensary would arguably make this board an accessory, if not an accomplice, to a host of federal crimes. Therefore, gentlemen, I am urging rejection of this proposal. And that concludes my remarks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Okay, so I agree. I should have asked the question earlier. Ms. Hart, can't force you. Is there any chance that your company would find a different site away from the school? And you don't have to come up, you can just answer it. Or,
The microphone's got to be able to hear.
oh, I'm sorry, okay, I apologize.
The way the site selection process works is typically a company will apply to multiple locations, and that's submitted to the Board of Pharmacy through their very stringent process. And they will actually go through the due diligence of analyzing the sites from a compliance perspective, so to ensure that it is that 500 feet away from a church or a school, et cetera. And then depending on the type of selection, it'll either be a lottery selection, and the site will be selected based, or sites will be selected based on that, or an assessment of the location, the traffic, the feasibility of that location.
Okay.
So in this most recent drawing, it was a lottery. We did apply to multiple locations, and this was the one that was selected by the Board of Pharmacy.
Oh, Board of Pharmacy, okay.
Yes,
I didn't realize
so
that.
State of
So-
Ohio Board of Pharmacy.
Okay, so is there any way that you would be willing to work with the township to not find a different site away from the residential community and/or the school as well? Or is this it?
We would be willing to, but unfortunately, the Board of Pharmacy, the license is
Got it.
granted to this specific site.
Got it, okay, perfect, yeah, thank you, Ms. Hart, I
Okay.
appreciate it.
Shall I say?
Oh, no, that's all I got.
I got a
That's all my
follow-up,
question.
a quick
Okay.
follow-up question
Okay,
for.
then just make sure to come back.
Okay.
Yeah, after you're done.
For her? Yeah.
No, for
Oh,
me, for my
sorry.
comment.
Yeah, yeah. So your topic about the licensure, that sounds like a long process, goes through the Board of Pharmacy. How long is that process for retrospect? And tell me, what's your familiarity with the, again, on site selection and the moratoriums that are put in place on different locations, and why Union Township is something that you were able to even receive a site for?
Sure. So the process as a whole, this last round, I would say we're probably close to the 12-month mark. So there's a process typically 3 to 6 months that the applicants are able to prepare their documentation and submit to the Board of Pharmacy. Then the Board of Pharmacy has, I think they typically aim for 30 to 60 days. It typically will go past that to make their selections. And then they have final due diligence based on those selections to ensure that they meet the compliance. So as far as this location, we did go through, and I think Mark might have mentioned, we did have the appropriate zoning for the parcel directly adjacent. But that unfortunately was, the way we submitted the zoning application, we referenced both parcels, but because the building was inadvertently shown on the incorrect parcel, the zoning certificate that we received from Union Township was, although it specified both parcel numbers, I think the intent was that it was for that smaller parcel or skinnier parcel, which unfortunately was not the parcel on which we were granted the license by Board of Pharmacy,
Okay,
hence why we are here.
okay.
I'm
So-
sorry, did I miss a piece of your question?
Yeah, well, and partly, I'd back it up a little bit more as far as, it's my understanding, again, we've heard a lot tonight, and probably an hour and 10, 20 minutes of commentary that is important to hear, community feedback, but tonight's venue is what we're being asked to do. Does this fit the zoning requirements for a retail business? And is that retail business a permitted use in planned development? And from what I heard earlier, from community feedback, and that's why I'd love to continue to hear more community feedback, but it's my understanding, and I think you stated it in the Ohio Revised Code there about the moratorium, but the time to decide on these businesses that are currently applying has already passed. You know, that's something I want to ask Mark and Susan to engage the community with, but if in discussion with our legal, I mean, the short answer is that in our zoning resolution, as early as 2016, when the Ohio Revised Code passed, we could have taken action as a board, prior to this board, to pass a moratorium that prohibits medical marijuana dispensaries. The township could have passed that, prohibiting the cultivation, distribution, or sale. And that's within township under Ohio law. But because that was not previously done, it's not applying here. So that's part of my question. How do you get to the site selection when this is already, like, you know, Union Township doesn't have a moratorium in place, or that's through the Board of Pharmacy? Like,
Correct.
that's
So-
that's part of my question.
So as part of that application process, we engage a legal team to assess the local ordinances, whether there's a moratorium, et cetera.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. You got more?
It's all good. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so I get it. It's a very emotional topic. Pastors speaking, people for it, medical testimony. I hear it loud and clear. Mr. Logue's right. This is not a vote of yes, I'm in favor of marijuana, medical marijuana. This is not a no vote of I'm against medical marijuana. We've got our law director sitting over here, Mr. Conover. We've got our administrator right over here. I want both of you to interrupt me if I'm wrong on anything. You're not going to hurt my feelings, interrupt me. But so from my understanding, so I've tried to do a lot of research leading up to tonight's vote, is does this business and does this build, does it meet all the legal zoning requirements? It is not, do you like marijuana or do you not like it? Does it meet the requirements set forth by our township? And so, talking in depth with our legal team and with Ms. Ayers, our administrator, from my understanding, if we vote this down, we're kind of stuck in a rock and a hard place. We are going to get sued. It's going to happen, probably. And it will cost hundreds of thousands of dollars because our legal team will be fighting your legal team. And our legal team is telling me we will probably lose this case. And so, again, I asked both of you to interrupt me if I'm wrong on this. And so if we vote this down, we're going to be taking the residents that live in Union Township, your tax dollars, probably, and it's going to be caught up in litigation and hundreds of thousands of dollars to fight this. And after we fight it, spending your tax dollars, we're going to probably lose if we have a crystal ball, based off the advice that I'm being given. If I vote yes on it, now we have a medical marijuana dispensary, and I know a lot of some of you folks don't like that. So I'm being asked the question: does this meet the zoning requirements in Union Township? And based off my zoning director, based off my administrator, and based off my law director, who are the smartest people in this room, in my opinion, they all tell me yes, it does. What choice do I have? We vote no and shoot this down. I have to think reasonably and logically, and what's the best use of tax dollars. It's going to be, we're going to be fighting with a lot of money and a lot of time to fight this, when in the end, we will lose, in my opinion, based off what I'm being told. And again, I asked them to interrupt me if I was wrong on anything I just said, and they haven't. So, I don't know what choice I have. The question at hand is, does this meet our zoning requirements? It's not, do I like marijuana or not? So, that's all I got. Go ahead.
No, to refocus that, I mean, I heard a public comment tonight about the brick or stone style facade. And I did hear Mr. Hartman's identify that they're agreeable to the 5 recommended modifications. So that's one, that's to refocus it, talk about it. I hear where you're going, and I hear where you're going, and I hear where the moratorium, the time has passed to be able to put something in place that would prohibit, but I think that begs the question when let's look what we can do moving forward. Do we put something moving forward that we actually take the, board's time and the staff's time to engage community, get feedback, and look at what those next steps are, Ms. Ayers, Mr. McCormick, as far as, what are the appropriate steps to be able to further, if the community if the community interest is not to allow medical marijuana dispensaries, cultivation and grow locations, or whatever it is needed there for distribution, then we need to be able to take those actions. Again, unfortunately, we can't unwind the clock and go back to 2016 and pass a resolution that predates their 12 months of their application and where they currently are. That's the legal opinion that I've heard as well. So just to refocus that, it is, brick or facade. Is that anything you want to comment on, Mr. Becker, as far as the zoning of it, brick, facade, landscape, to look at the overall package it is, or?
What is the material for the building in the package?
Mr. McCormick, what's the stake for the material of the building?
Actually don't know. I'll answer that one. It's fiber cement.
Can you come up, if we have a couple questions for you, yeah, you're the architect. The architect could come up, that'd be great. Thank you. Thank you. Can you please state your name again for the record?
Yep, Greg Snyder with RDA.
Okay. Yeah, so what's the material that you have?
Fiber cement siding,
Fiber cement sliding?
that's correct.
Okay.
My understanding is that is appropriate per the zoning ordinance. Is that incorrect?
That's how it's been viewed up to this point.
Thank you.
And you have cedar planks on the
Cedar
rear.
planks for the security enclosure at the rear, yes.
Okay. Yeah, we have, that is what we have historically had through.
And this case came in roughly within the first couple of days of when I started working here. So the staff here had been working with the applicants for, I don't know how long.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I don't know when they started the design process and all that, but I did see that, again, like as Ms. Kate said earlier, the 12-month application process.
Yeah, our involvement with the design here has been since February of this year at the least. So
Okay.
this has been a long process
Okay.
with a lot of vetting.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, I think it's, as I'm in my mind kind of reviewing other proposals that we've approved or we've seen over the years, they do typically have a brick or a stone facade for, aesthetics.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would support making that modification to this proposal.
Yeah. And I know, with that, I know we have, fiber, would you say ceramic fiberboard?
Fiber cement, yes.
Fiber
Hardy
cement.
plank, if you would.
Yeah.
Hardy?
The hardy board, yeah. I mean,
Yep.
we've had that on, I'm thinking of the Dollar General and a few different business locations, on 125. So I know that's, but, if you're asking that, is that something you consider to look at, any brick or stone type of facade? work through
Again,
the-
I
for
would ask if that's a
administrative
requirement of the zoning
Okay.
ordinance itself. It would be our preference to stay as designed.
Yeah. Mr. McCormick, is there any room for that to work through for any minor modification with it for administrative review, or
So.
is that,
Yes, there are things that can be dealt with in administrative review. The zoning resolution itself does not contain the reference to the building materials. It's the comprehensive plan.
okay,
And in my opinion, the comprehensive plan and the way that it's being used here is not the way that the comprehensive plan is usually intended to be used as a guidance document.
yeah,
Not as a resolution, and here they've been using it in terms of a resolution. They're
Okay.
not the same type of document.
okay,
And so there are changes that need to be made to the resolution. Undoubtedly, I've been making a list. At the same time, you know, the materials are not in the resolution. The material issue is not in the resolution. And that's
Okay.
something that's been commonly cited, as far as I can tell in the staff reports, from the comprehensive plan.
okay. Okay, all right, thank you. Mr. Dills, you have any questions? No. Okay. All right, well, gentlemen, thank you. Like I said, yeah, I'm just trying to stay on the topic here as far as, so, yeah, it's, going through this, the application, looking that it has met the submission requirements, you know, as required under Article 6, Section 684, 686, 1130, 1131. The determination that the proposed amendment is consistent with the spirit and intent of the zoning resolution, which it's a retail business and zoning calls for and planned development. And we've not heard anything for any other additional zoning impacts or adjacent property impacts due to a zoning constraint. It's kind of very similar to the prior zoning case with the water runoff. There's certain things that are within scope that we have control on. So I've got no further comments at this time. So we're being asked, gentlemen, to, in accordance with section 680, 687 of the zoning resolution, to either enter a motion of approve with some modification, or deny the applicant's request to approve a major amendment to an approved PD plan development district. Do we have that motion?
You already make a motion?
Yeah, do we have that motion?
Yeah, we already made a motion. It's roll
Oh,
call.
I'm sorry.
We had a prior motion.
Yeah, just open the discussion.
Is this
Do you have any further-
modifying
sorry.
the motion?
No, not modifying it, just, I was just going back to the motion that we had to open the discussion, and
Do
so
we
now we
need to
can,
modify it?
It's my understanding
No.
that the motion on the floor is to approve subject to the modifications that are listed in the staff
Correct.
report.
Correct.
So that is pending before the board. If you would like, I know we've been back and forth about the stone, you could choose to amend that to add an additional condition if you choose to do so. We've had some discussion about it not actually being in the zoning resolution for a requirement, but what is pending before the board is to approve subject to the modifications that are listed in the staff report before you.
So are we adding to the staff report, or adding the additional, the stone that we just talked about?
not at this time. The response I got from Mr. McCormick as far as the response to the comprehensive plan being utilized to previously make those minor modifications is something that doesn't seem to support the legal challenge.
Okay.
So we can close discussion. Roll call, Mr. Campbell?
Mr. Dills?
Yes.
Mr. Logue?
Yes.
Mr. Becker?
No.
Motion carries.
All right, gentlemen, we've got comments from the board. Let me just hit just a couple up front for us, okay? This is just fresh on my mind with, again, the discussion with the one public hearing. We really had the same thing happening there in the first hearing case and the second hearing case. Something that's outside, essentially, in my perspective of it, and from talking with the experts, legal counsel, et cetera, the scope of what we're looking at. We're looking at the resolution. But we've already talked resolution tonight. I just want to talk bigger picture. Medical marijuana. So there is the ability to put a moratorium in place. And I think that maybe, we want to hear from the community, and we want to have Mr. McCormick and Ms. Ayers, push, strategically into that direction of what's the best way to have community feedback on that. Obviously, they're already doing things like doing an RFP for, technology tools to help us with community feedback, so I'm not going to expect anything overnight. But, I think in general, this is something that could be years not now, but could have been years in the process, because I believe that Ohio Revised Code was first enacted in 2016 that allowed a location like Union Township to be able to put a moratorium in place and say, we do not want it here in Union Township, we do not want it in Mount Carmel, et cetera. So I'm interested in getting community feedback, so if there's a general sense from the board, that's all I'm asking for, to empower Miss Ayers and Mr. McCormick. I'm seeing some head nods. Sound good? Okay, sounds good. All right, thank you. 'Cause the other topic that comes to mind on that, and to put that as a question of, as you kind of get, more sharper on that and what's in place, but I believe you walk into jungle gyms, there's hookahs and bongs in there right next to the cigars. I know I've seen hookahs. So, I mean, it's kind of a question. I've heard that comment tonight. It's like, there's hookahs and bongs in there. So, do we make it, just know what we're getting into as far as what, again, is in the scope of the board and the powers that Ohio Revised Code have given. All right, gentlemen, I'll hand it over to you. I just want to get that first one off the top. Go ahead. Thank you. Mr. Becker?
Yeah, so, going back to the marijuana discussion, I really did appreciate the debate we had. Both sides of this issue, coming forward, the multiple perspectives, I really appreciate and enjoyed that. I was just wondering if anybody noticed with the medical marijuana facility, when I inquired about what retail products are you selling, and she said rolling papers. Okay, rolling papers are not illegal, but rolling papers are for smoking marijuana. Smoking marijuana is illegal, medical or otherwise, under state law. Why are they selling roller papers? Obviously, it's to smoke it, which is illegal. Just wanted to point that out. I don't know if anybody noticed that as well. Also, I think that is all I have. Thank you.
As I just have to segue part of that, and I'll do my normal announcements here, but I see those at jungle gyms too, and pretty much any gas station, so it's to what extent. So anyway, we'll look for the staff and we'll look for feedback.
You can smoke tobacco with them,
That's right.
but they're not selling tobacco at the marijuana shop.
I don't believe that it's smoke. I think they said that it's not smokable, and Chief Aviglia has given me the look too, because he probably interacts with some of these concerns that people come up with, crime, et cetera, but to my knowledge, at least what was presented, it was not what you're thinking of, the stories of rolling and smoking something.